But I always said someday I wanted to work for Autodesk because that was the coolest thing I had ever seen, to be able to take all of those engineering designs I had in my head and be able to put them out on paper, or in this case, computer paper.
Shelly, welcome to Airtable Thoughtcast, a series where we speak with product and operations leaders who are transforming their businesses through operational excellence and AI innovation. I'm Anthony Maggio, the VP of Product Management at Airtable, and I'm thrilled to welcome Shelly La Rock, Head of Product Operations and Delivery Excellence at Autodesk. Autodesk is a global software leader, empowering innovators to design and make everything from buildings to bridges, digital products, movies, and games. And with flagship tools like AutoCAD, Revit, and Fusion 360, they serve industries across architecture, engineering, construction, manufacturing, media, and more. Shelly brings over 30 years of experience working with teams spanning across engineering, marketing, communications, and she was recently named Product Operations Leader of the Year by the Product Red Alliance. She joined Autodesk in 2023 and has been driving remarkable transformation in product operations. So Shelly, welcome.
Thank you, Anthony. It's great to be here.
Great. Well, I'd love to just start out hearing a little bit about your journey into product operations at Autodesk. Can you give us a sense of your background and how you came into this role?
Sure. So I started my career working primarily in engineering, technical writing, technical marketing. Went to school for engineering, came out. Turned out I could write about engineering as well as I could do it. And back 30 years ago, that was a more lucrative career path. I spent the first 15 years of my career working with engineering teams, communications teams, marketing, technical marketing. And one of the things I saw over and over were where we had some pain points, where we were struggling to support our go-to-market teams, where our go-to-market teams and our support and customer success teams weren't really getting the information they needed in a timely enough manner. And I think at some point, about 15 years ago, I was complaining a little bit too much about it. And Thomson Reuters said, if you think you can fix it, fix it. And so I fixed it, in the sense of just understanding how data flows, how ideas flow, how information flows through systems. That was long before product operations had a title or the name it does today. And I've spent the last 15 years doing exactly that work across a number of different companies. How I arrived at Autodesk is that we'll just say more than 30 years ago, when I was in college, my very first engineering class was AutoCAD. It was version 11. It was still being installed on floppy disks. And so some of you are probably laughing, not even knowing what that is. But I always said someday I wanted to work for Autodesk because that was the coolest thing I had ever seen, to be able to take all of those engineering designs I had in my head and be able to put them out on paper, or in this case, computer paper. And so an opportunity came up a couple of years ago to help Autodesk build a product operations and delivery excellence team within their enterprise and IT division. And I jumped at it. It finally came back full circle. And I've been here for 2 years and absolutely love what I'm doing here.
That's amazing. What an awesome story and personal connection to the product that brought you there.
We're way past AutoCAD version 11 these days. And the technology's just been crazy and so much better. And it's amazing to see what happens in 30 years, both personally and professionally.
Awesome. So for anyone who's not super familiar with product operations, maybe just give us a high-level overview of how you think about the role, the function of product ops in a modern product organization, and the scale of what product operations needs to accomplish at a company like Autodesk.
I think scale is the key word. It is, how do we take all of these different product teams that are working on different products, different customer bases, different tool stacks, and how do we help them work better? How do I give a product manager back 25 or 50% of their time so they can actually be doing discovery and talking to customers? We take those things that are repetitive, that are iterative, and we take those and we operationalize those, and we set some standards, not rigid standards, but we're building consistency and efficiency for product managers, as well as for teams upstream and downstream of product managers. And that's really, it's different at every company. If you ask 20 product operations professionals what they're doing in their company, you're probably going to get 20 slightly different answers. A lot of it just is based on the needs of the business that you're working in at that moment. But collectively, over the last 15 plus years of this specific work, it's about giving product managers their time back and enabling upstream and downstream teams to work better with product and engineering.
That sounds like a large challenge and a large surface area. And I
Oh,
know
yeah.
you mentioned, yeah, the scale of the product org at Autodesk. So give us kind of a rough sense of what that looks like across teams, or how many product
Sure.
managers your teams interact with.
I think at last count, we did a count. We're around somewhere between 500 and 600 product managers at
Wow.
Autodesk. And those are split up. We have three major product divisions, but we also have our platform and internal IT and enterprise teams that also have product managers. So we have product managers spread across the company. And that is part of us scaling. When you mentioned the word scale, that's why, I keyed in on that word. How do we go from, let's say, 600 to 1,000? Or 1,000 to 1,500 down the road. And that operationalizing product management practices is about helping teams scale.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd love to get into that and some of the specifics around what that looks like. And maybe we can just start with when you joined Autodesk in 2023. What were some of those big challenges that you were encountering relating to scaling the product management function when you first came on board? And how are you still thinking about tackling those challenges today?
Absolutely. When I arrived in 2023, we had amazing product teams just like we do today, but they were all working just a little bit differently. Um, One of the biggest areas that we tackled right away was centralizing our intake, our feedback, our customer feedback loops, both internal customers and external customers. We were using disconnected tools. We had intake coming in through all sorts of different channels. I mean, there's not a person on this call who doesn't understand the feedback black hole. We wanted to solve that. We did solve that. We now centralize all of our intake. It can still come in through email, cocktail napkins, Slack messages, you know, intake forms, whatever it is. But we've centralized close to 100 intake channels into a single repository. So now our product teams see all requests, and we have to balance that not the noise. I mean, somebody said, well, isn't that noisy? It is, but through use of AI and use of other tools, we're able to start really aggregating those themes, and we're starting to give product managers 5 or 6 product theme areas to work on, as opposed to 3,000 individual requests that they're trying to track in 20 or 30 different systems.
Yeah.
That's really where we started.
Yeah. And what are you seeing in terms of the impact of that type of centralization on the
Yeah.
way that product teams are working, or the way that they're able to better serve Autodesk customers?
So I'll start with one team that I support specifically, which is our enterprise and IT product teams, and we're at about 160 product managers within this particular organization. And when I came in, we measured intake. We were getting 30 or 40 requests each month in their system of record, and 6% of those were getting assigned. And that was, people had to go in and manually read through all of those and figure out which ones were theirs or belonged to their teams. And last count, we had increased that over 900%. So we have 900% increase in our intake, and 100% of all requests through the use of AI and certain automations that we've employed are assigned out to product teams the minute they hit our system. Um, we also communicate back to those who are requesting work from us, or requesting, submitting their ideas. Um, Customer ideas, whether internal or external, are the basis of everything we do. Customer feedback is so critical, and we want our customers to know that we've received their feedback. If they have additional information, we give them a place where they can, link out and find their request, check on the status of it, add some additional information, and we're keeping them notified through automation every time something changes status. And so that's been absolutely critical for our customers. We've increased intake. We have better visibility of what the actual problems to solve are, what the pain points are. And we've actually, through that effort, have trained our customers to come to us with their problems, not their solutions. I'm sure
Yeah.
product managers always love to hear that.
Yeah. It sounds like a amazing impact and much smoother process than what you were managing previously. I
Mhm.
would imagine that just at the scale of Autodesk, any kind of standardization or process change is pretty tricky to implement. Like any advice or challenges that you run into and that you can share with our listeners around, how to manage
Yeah.
a large scale process change in a company of that size.
We're still figuring that out, Anthony. No, it's change is hard, and I have change is hard written on sticky notes on my bathroom mirror, on my desk at home, on my computer, because change is hard, and rolling out large scale change requires really good change management principles and efforts. Um, we're lucky to have some great change management folks here, and but we still struggle with the same thing everybody does. And so it's about starting early, and it's about continuing keeping our customers in that loop.
Mhm.
We're not dictating these changes. We're sharing the changes that we're making based on their feedback. And
Mhm.
that's been really a huge driver for us, is that our customers are excited. They're waiting for this change to come. And so by doing so, by keeping them, early conversations, keeping them updated throughout our development processes and all the work that goes into operationalizing product management, we're able to keep them updated. And so by the time we roll it out, they already know what it is. They know how it's changing their work. They know what the value is, and they're ready to go.
Yeah. And how about on the internal side? Like I'd imagine just, any kind of process change or new tooling that you bring in requires a lot of coordination and change management for your product team. Like any best
Yeah.
practices or learnings that you've had there around how to roll out some of these really kind of large scale systems and processes to better serve the product organization.
Also, a big challenge.
Yeah.
We have lots of product teams that have been doing things their way for a long time. And it wasn't about, the approach wasn't to go in and change everything for them. It was about how do we make that even better for them?
Mhm.
And how do we connect the great things being done in this team to that team to that team so that we can really leverage the incredible resources, knowledge, and experience we have within our product teams here to share that out with everybody. We have a product management guild internally at Autodesk where all product teams across the company, we share the trainings that we've gone through, we share best practices, we share our standards. We align on everything, even down to product management career path and trajectories. We talk about what the best practices are within product teams. So there's still a large effort. You have to understand what, just the simple thing of doing an impact assessment for each team, of making sure that they're heard, making sure that everybody understands what the impact of any change is on them, and helping enable those changes has gone a great distance for us.
Yeah. I can
But
imagine.
it's still a lot of work to do. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
2 years in, and we're still working on things that we started 2 years ago. It's a large challenge.
I'll bet. It sounds like it. Well, let's shift our focus to AI. And clearly, we've seen externally that AI is transforming Autodesk's business. You've recently unveiled some really groundbreaking initiatives like Project Barini and generative AI 3D shape creation. So, can you just start telling us a little bit about Autodesk's AI strategy as a whole and what's driving some of these initiatives?
I mean, we've leveraged AI for some time, and so to us, AI isn't new. We've been using it. We've been enabling it for our customers. My engineering brain loves the idea that I can go in and upload a design, and I will automatically get views of what different structures, different processes, different materials might look like. The generative AI capabilities are fascinating. I mean, they're thinking about things that I'm thinking about, but they're doing it before I thought about them. Internally, we've been using. We have dedicated intelligent automation team. We have an AI, center of excellence where we literally harness all of the great ideas around AI. In product specifically, we've all of our product teams are going through advanced AI training, and they're all becoming AI practitioners. And we keep a library of even things like prompt engineering. We have a library of prompt engineering items that have worked really well for this team that might work well for this team. And so we meet regularly and we talk about these things and we share our information. I think that's the biggest thing I love about this place, Anthony, is the constant sharing of information between teams.
Yeah.
It's just such a game changer, and it allows us to advance so much faster.
Yeah, and that's fascinating on the AI training side. I know so many of our customers, so many folks that I speak with come and frequently ask me, how we're equipping our product team to better build products with AI. Can you share a little bit more about what that AI training looks like and any other practices or offerings that you're making available to your product team to get up to speed on how to build great AI products?
Sure, there's lots of external training programs out there, and we leverage several of them. We've given all of our product managers, an annual subscription to a training platform that allows them to go in and cherry pick the content that may be most relevant to either them or their team. But we also have group AI training that we've done. Um, this week, we have our intelligent automation team meeting with our product teams to just let them know what capabilities we have within Autodesk to use AI and to use automation in other ways. So again, it is about identifying the resources. Autodesk is a large company. There's teams that may not have even known we had an intelligent automation team, right? And so we want to make sure that we find all those resources we have internally, and we are looking at, we're constantly looking for our peers to share their best practices, and we share ours. So we do have some, I mean, we've gone through some pragmatic training on AI. We have other providers that have provided AI training. And then again, let's put it to use. Let's take a community of practice, a product management community of practice session, and let's have all the product managers who want to participate come in with their best use of AI or their big questions. Information sharing here is what really drives progress for us.
Yeah, that's great advice, and definitely no better people to uncover those use cases than the folks who are dealing with them hands on day to day.
Or come with your biggest problem. I mean, like, what is the one thing you can't do? And let's figure out how to do that. And for us, when we were talking about intake, um, we found out we didn't have 40 or 50 requests coming into our internal product teams. We had hundreds and hundreds of requests. And once we got them all in one place, it became really important for us to find ways to start saying, they were struggling, product teams, the capacity of our teams to even review 50 requests a month was a lot. Now we're talking 300, 400, 500 requests a month. So we use AI to group those together. We're doing some logical groupings and saying, first step is this is where we think these requests are landing and with the teams and stakeholders. And it's just simplified that intake review process. It's allowed us to build some iteration, around intake review, and whether it's a single domain or whether it's cross domain, our product teams are broken down in domain teams. And it's just been amazing to see.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the intersection of AI and product operations is fascinating. There's so much room for opportunity. And
Huge.
despite all the innovation, despite all the new tools that are available, I still hear so many of the teams that we work with, say that their product managers spend just a huge amount of time on administrative work or on
Yeah.
internal facing work that doesn't serve the customer, right? So you mentioned intake as one big use case. Are there other areas that you're starting to pursue or other use cases that you're seeing that have the opportunity for that type of standardization really across the product org to help accelerate product development?
Largely on the passing of work between teams.
Mhm.
So we do intake into product, and then once it goes through initial review, triage, and prioritization, once the project or program is sanctioned, then we hand it back over to PMO, right, our program management office. And right now, our teams are in different tools. And so we're leveraging technology to identify when something reaches that threshold of being sanctioned as a project or program, and how do we pass that back over? And how do we provide traceability both to our product teams, our PMOs, our engineering teams, our testing teams, everybody? How do we provide that traceability, as well as regular feedback updates to our requesters and stakeholders?
Mhm.
And so, again, the technology before was a lot of heavy handed coding. And, we're able to go in today and I can generate some scripts to do that pretty quickly. I don't have to know how to write all this. I mean, I do know how to write all the scripts, but I can do it much faster.
Yeah.
Our teams can do it much faster. So it's been amazing to watch just even early stages of us connecting all of our teams through integrated, workflows.
Yeah. Yeah, if you think about like, obviously we've seen just a dramatic amount of acceleration of AI over the last 2 years. So, as you think about the challenges within Autodesk and the speed of progression of these AI models and what's possible in terms of how teams are working with AI, like what kinds of capabilities or what kinds of processes are you most excited about incorporating into your product operations toolkit next? Like if you think about fast forwarding kind of where the world's going to be, a year from now, how do you see AI changing really the way that those teams work within the organization?
I'll just bring it back to our tech stack. Our tech stack, we've worked hard to standardize a tech stack that serves the needs of our customers, the needs of our teams. And being able to, part of that workflow and part of a project or program management here is we have a lot of phases. We have large, stage gates that each project or program goes through, and each one has a set of standard deliverables. Even things like an opportunity assessment, which comes in initially with the request, or a product requirements document, the good old PRD.
Yeah,
We're finding ways now to help our teams plug in information, pull information out of the opportunity assessment, out of the intake review process, and auto generate their product requirements documents. And this is a painstaking process, as I'm sure you and all of our product managers on the call know. Developing all of these documents throughout the life cycle, throughout the PDLC, the product development life cycle, takes a huge amount of work. So we're really excited about changes and progress we've been able to make in identifying those areas where we can pull data, generate the content that's needed, and instead of doing a full writing, reviewing, and editing, we're now just doing that quick review and edit at the end. So it's giving our product teams, we anticipate it's going to give our product teams a significant chunk of their time back.
that's great and awesome. Awesome places to focus and opportunity and query. Yes, we've
Yeah.
seen a lot of teams starting to get excited about automating documentations, and it's such a big time of the PM's day and time
Well, and
stack.
it's funny because I spent a good chunk of my career doing technical writing. And
Yeah,
so I'm kind of like, nope, there's nothing that will ever write things as well as a good writer will. And so I'm a little biased on that front. But, some of the outputs we're seeing, and even in some of the early pilots we did, recently were pretty good. They were great. I we're still reminding our teams that there's a human side of anything generated that we want them to make sure that we're keeping. Um, but we're finding just the time savings of and the standards. When I say standards, I'm not talking about rigid standards. I mean, we're talking about consistency. If our stakeholders are looking for a template for an opportunity assessment, market requirements document, whatever you might want to call it, we give them a template. We're not telling them how to word that first paragraph or that third section, but we're telling them these are the key things that we need to really help you the best. And so we're doing that at each stage now. Instead of just doing it at the beginning, we're using all of those standards and operations to really do that consistently throughout the entire PDLC.
yeah, that's great and an amazing way to support the rest of the product organization there. I'd love to hear more about how you see AI actually impacting your function specifically. So product operations, like as the needs of the product organization are starting to change. You talked about doing training and enablement, AI training and enablement for PMs. What is the impact you're seeing within the product ops function, and how is it changing the way that you think about the people or profiles or services that product operations provides to the rest of the organization?
When I first started this back a few years back, we'll just say a few years, we had to have a data team. We had to have a comms team. We had to have a release management team. Product operations teams were much larger because you needed people to actually do the work of establishing the workflow integrations, building out those workflows for starters, and then building the integrations and the data flows and all of these things. We had to assign people to develop narratives on data or to pull the data. And through the use of AI and other new technology advances, I see a trend towards product operations teams becoming leaner.
Mm-hmm.
We're automating work that used to be done by people, and the environment we're in today, the job market is hard, and so AI and automations and technology is being driven by necessity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't We don't have a team of 20 people to pull data, but I can pull data. just as easy, not just as easily, but I can still pull data using technology solutions. So we're just seeing a lot of necessity based progress in these areas, specifically around cadences, even cadence reminders of making sure all teams are doing biweekly backlog reviews, that each team has 2 weeks of shovel ready backlog, right? I mean, that each dev team has 2 weeks, 2 sprints worth of shovel ready backlog. We can automate that monitoring of that information now.
Yeah. How is that changing the way like you think about the profile of your product operations team? Like it
Mm,
sounds like probably a different skill set than what you even hired for in the past to help drive some of
it
those types
is.
of automations and thinking.
Very much so, and it's not something I hear a lot of people talking about. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
As I said, I'm seeing leaner teams. I'm
Hmm.
seeing a lot of teams of one. I was hired in as a team of one, and so when I came into Autodesk, my role was to really assess current state of product management and engineering operations. Come up with the recommendations, and then we've slowly started building more efforts around that. But I knew coming in 2 years ago that this was not going to be, I'm going to have a data team and a comms team and a release management or project management team. And so it was such a cool opportunity to step into this new way of work. And that's really where, it's just, I'm hiring, if I had two headcount open, I wouldn't be looking for a data analyst, or I wouldn't be looking for somebody specific with comms. I'm looking for more people who are good at managing programs, who understand how the entire PDLC works.
Hmm.
I mean, the product development lifecycle end to end. It used to be we would hire for slots, right? We would hire somebody at the first party, intake, triage, feedback. We're now looking at much larger, knowledge sets that they need to span the entire PDLC or SDLC.
Yeah, that makes sense. And lots of sounds like lots of opportunity for those higher level thinkers to come in with more of a perspective too, as well as around how to incorporate AI into some of these processes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the questions that I often hear from our customers is really around how to stand up a product operations organization. So I'm curious to hear, like, just given your extensive experience in this field and where you see the function going with AI, if you were to give advice to a company who's really just getting started on that product op journey, where would you suggest they take the first step?
Well, since my first step was because I complained too much, find a product person who likes to complain. No, I'm kidding. And I was never complaining just for the sake of complaining. I never come with a problem without a proposed solution. So I at least should cover myself on that piece. This is really about like understanding every product manager works in problems to solve, jobs to be done, right? Um, I think every product organization knows where their teams are struggling. Where are they spending most of their time? I mean, I just did a simple time assessment with our product leaders and said,
Mhm.
are your teams spending, which phase of the PDLC are your teams spending the most time in? Where are they struggling the most? And we talked about all of it, and it was the same. They were struggling to produce all of the artifacts that are needed for an entire program. They were struggling with getting feedback and communicating changes, all of those things. And so it's not a lot different. As far as standing up a team, again, I've always come in usually as a team of one and then built the team afterwards.
Mhm.
I come in and do the assessment, understand where the team is at, and then you start adding resources. There's entire frameworks out there. I mean, Melissa Perry does a great job talking about how do you approach product operations as a team of one, a small lean team and then a large scale team. I think we're getting past the days of seeing large scale teams. Even in a company the size of Autodesk, we're still a very lean function here. We are looking at the best practices, and we're sharing them out across the business, and we're leveraging the support teams that they already have. So there's different approaches.
So that's interesting about the flattening state of teams. Like I'll ask another advice question. So given that flattening state of teams and in product operations in particular, what's a piece of advice that you'd give to someone maybe earlier in their career than yourself who's thinking about moving into a product operations function?
Oh, sure. Always be looking at bigger picture. You don't. get into a role like product operations is intended to help the entire product organization, in my case also engineering organization. And so first thing is if I've got too narrow of a view, I'm only going to be able to be effective in that one area. Be curious. How does, if you're a product manager today, or if you're working in a product management organization, you want to step into the operational world, think about end to end. I mean, I spend very little time looking at small slices of our PDLC. And instead, I'm not just looking at the product team or engineering teams. I'm also looking large scale at what are the customer feedback? I mean, how do we do intake from our customers? How do we communicate with them downstream? How are we enabling our go-to-market teams? If you have knowledge in those areas, and I spent the first half of my career doing just that intentionally, engineering, marketing, looking at building out customer success operations, building out support and sales operations, understanding the needs of all of those, because product is really that if you think in concentric circles, product managers, we're right in the middle of it, and everything we do goes out from there, and we have to understand and know what the needs are of each of those teams. But again, the curiosity piece is we all have ideas of how to improve our work. If we asked 1,000 people and said, well, one thing would make your job better, there won't be a single person who doesn't have an answer, I would imagine.
Yeah.
This is about collecting all of those and bucketizing them and prioritizing them and figuring out how do we help each other. This is more of a people job, Anthony, than I ever imagined it would be. I mean, I am a systems thinker. My brain is constantly thinking about how this connects to this and where do I need to build stubs for connections and data flows and things like that. And that's just my brain naturally. Um, the people side of it is 75%. Because I can talk a good game, technology all day, but if I can't help people work together better, then processes don't stand up by themselves.
Absolutely. Great advice. I always think about product operations as the product management role of the whole organization, right? The product organization essentially is your product, right? That you're
It is.
building and improving upon. And I love the advice you gave there around understanding and cataloging those problems and building the backlog that your own product operations team can tackle.
And sometimes I've started teams, Anthony, where what the product management organization wasn't the first person we helped. It
Yeah.
was go to market.
Yeah.
Sometimes you identifying what those acute needs are versus what those longer term strategic needs are is also ability to do that's also very important.
Absolutely. Yeah. That overall impact ownership. Right. All right. Well, we're just getting into our final segment here, and we have a couple of quick fire rapid questions that I'd love to ask you before we wrap up. So I'll start with what's a product or tool that you've recently discovered that you love or recommend to our audience?
So this is not planned at all, but Airtable. I've this is the first place I've used Airtable. And I, that no, the question was not staged. It was not pitched either. I mean, this is truly. I mean, I've used all of the product management tools, all of the engineering platforms, and when I think about program and project management, particularly PMO organizations, someone introduced me to Airtable a couple of years ago, and I dove it. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is that piece that was missing for us. The ability to allow our teams to meet our teams where they're at. We are not going to put project and program management in tools that were meant for product managers or meant for engineers. The ability to pull information into Airtable was much cooler than I thought it could be, to be quite honest. And to be able to show, to visualize, give those visualizations some color, some organization, the ability to share with stakeholders, even back into their own system of record and their own systems of choice, was really just a huge plus. And I've become a big fan and a bit of a geek over it.
Well, thank you for the compliment. We hear that a lot. Once you become a fan, it's
You're done.
hard to drop.
That's just it. You're always going to be an Airtable fan.
Awesome. Okay, so second question: if you weren't in your current role at Autodesk, if you
Yeah.
think about an alternative path of your life and career, what do you think you'd be building instead?
So this is gonna sound really strange. I wouldn't be working in technology. I always wanted to work on cars. Um,
Hmm.
my dad restored a my dad restored his father's 65 Chevy Impala when I was 6 years old. And I was the tool fetcher in the garage, one of three girls. And I fell in love with fixing things. And it was such a strange thing that I ended up going to school for mechanical engineering, pursued mechanical engineering because I thought that was the same. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not anything like that, right? You're not fixing things, you're building things, you're designing things. I love to work with my hands. I love um, but I do love fixing things. That's probably one of my biggest career downfalls is getting in that headspace too often of solutioning, right, and not understanding problems to solve. But either that or what also fixes things is my mom is a retired florist. I loved working at the flower shop because we all have this creative space in our brain. I didn't think I did, and then I learned that I love it. But flowers also fix things, right? You say the wrong thing at the wrong time to your wife, and flowers will probably help fix it. But those two fields have always, I'm saving them for retirement.
Well, it's no surprise you ended up here. That combination of creative and builder energy at
Builder
heart
fixer.
makes a lot of sense that you ended in technology. Okay, third rapid fire question. What's something you've read in the last year that
Ah.
you found especially interesting or that shifted your perspective?
Recently, I started reading Braiding Sweetgrass, and it is not a technology book. But it is an incredible read as far as how to lead with both head and heart. And that is part of my job that I've probably come to enjoy the most is working with the people. And you could put me in an office with the door shut and a bunch of systems to connect and fix, and I would love that. But that piece about working with my heart as well with the people is just an area the last couple of years that's been phenomenal. It's been life changing for me. Um, I mean, like been the best part of my career is stepping out of my comfort zone of tools and fixing things and really connecting with the teams that I get to support every day. And that book particularly is really just amazing focus on head and heart.
Wonderful. Sounds like a great recommendation. Excited to check it out. Excellent. Well, Shelly, thank you so much for joining us today on the Airtable Thoughtcast. Your insights around building and scaling operations team and driving product and operational excellence at scale are exactly what our audience is looking to hear. And everyone watching, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks so much, Anthony.